theyeshiva.net.
Okay, welcome everybody. We are up to Chaf Amud Aleph, Pesachim Chaf Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the bottom. Tanan Hasam. After the Gemarah completed discussing how tumor gets transferred from one level to another level, from a sheretz to a keli, from a keli to food, from food to drinks, etc. The Gemarah continues discussing how the tumah of a sheretz works. Tanan Hasam. We learned in a Mishnah over there. Over there is a Masechta Kelim, Perik Ches. The Mishnah says, sheretz shenimtza betanur. If a sheretz, a dead sheretz, a dead rodent from the 8 types of shrotzim, which when they become dead, they transfer tumah. So this sheretz was nimtza betanur. It was found in an oven. Thank you. The oven is an oven of cheres, meaning it was a clay oven. It was made of earthenware. It's an earthenware type of utensil, clay cheres. Now this sheretz never touched the food in the oven. It just went into the oven. It was found in the oven. There may be bread in the oven there at the moment or coming later, but the sheretz never touched the bread. So the halacha is hapasha b'soicha shniya. The bread inside the oven is considered a level of sheni, mipnei shahatanur tchila, because the oven itself is considered a tchila. A tchila is a rishon. So basically you have a sheretz. The sheretz is an av hatumah. Sheretz is a father of tumah, meaning it's a source of tumah. It generates tumah. And the sheretz was placed into this oven, or it fell into the oven. Maybe it went in, it wanted the food, right, and it died there, whatever the case is. How it got there is not so relevant to the halacha, but it's there. So what happens? The sheretz transfers tumah to the oven. So the oven became a rishon because it received tumah from the sheretz. Now the bread is in the oven. So the bread, even if I put the bread later in the oven, the bread is a rishon. So the bread now, which touches the oven, becomes a sheni. Because the keli, that's a rishon, is metame, the bread that becomes a sheni, shatan or tchila. So what's interesting is that the bread does not become tummy from the sheretz, the bread becomes tummy from the keli, which became tummy from the sheretz. And as we learned, this is a clay cheres. The uniqueness of a clay cheres is that the Torah tells us in Parshas Shmini that it's metame me'aviroi. The sheretz doesn't have to touch the keli. Even if the sheretz doesn't touch the keli, the sheretz is just suspended in the airspace of the keli becomes tummy. Right? In fact, if the sheretz touches the back of the keli, the outer surface of the keli is not tummy. If the sheretz touches the inner surface of the keli, and even not the inner surface, just the airspace, the toich, the cavity of the keli becomes a rishon l'tumah. Now the sheretz can be taken away. The sheretz is gone. Now I put in a piece of bread, or there was a piece of bread there. That piece of bread is in the airspace of the oven. So that piece of bread becomes a sheni. And even if the piece of bread didn't touch the oven, even if the piece of bread was suspended in the airspace of the oven, even if the pas is in the airspace. Remember, how did the clay cheres become tameh? From the avir. The avir of the clay cheres became tameh from the sheretz, right? Even if it didn't touch the clay cheres. So now when I put the pas, my bread, into the avir of the clay cheres, whether it touches the keli itself or not, usually it touches it, it goes in. But even if not, even if it's just suspended inside the avir, the pas is going to become a sheni l'tum. That's what the Mishnah teaches us in Meseches Kelim, based on the pasuk in Parshas Shmini that we learned a few times. You know, it'll be a little clearer. You mind bringing the blue chumash? Let's just see inside, and it'll be a little clearer in the Gemarah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Take a look at Rashi. Sheretz shenimtza betanur. You see the Rashi, the third to the last, 4 lines from the bottom. Sheretz shenimtza betanur v'lo naga bepas. The sheretz did not touch the pas. If the sheretz would touch the pas, the bread, the pas would be a rishon. But it didn't. So a pasha b'soicha sheni l'tumma ve'ena metamim chulin l'rabbana. According to the Rabbanan, this bread will not transfer tumah to chulin. Mipnei she'hatanur tchila, hatanur kibul tumah min hasheretz v'pas min hatanur. Like Rabbi Akiva, we learned yitma yitame, oichel can make shlishi. So this pas, if the pas falls into a cup of wine, the wine will become tameh. But like the Rabbanan, if it's chulin, sheni is the place where tumah stops, so therefore it will not make a shlishi. So if this piece of bread, which was in the oven, which came in contact with a sheretz, falls into wine, and the wine is chulin, nothing happens to the wine. If the wine is truma, the wine will become a shlishi, or if the wine is from karbonis, the wine could become tameh. But not if it's chulin. So that's what the Mishnah taught us in Masechta Kelim. That's the end of the Mishnah. I just want you to look at the pasuk for a moment. Remind ourselves this pasuk. Take a look in Parshas Shmini, in your Blue Chamasha, and please take a look, page 314. 314. Parshas Shmini, Vayikra Perek Yud Aleph, Leviticus chapter 11, right? Take a look at pasuk Chavtes. V'zelechem hatamei b'sheretz hasheretz al haaretz hachoyled ha'achbar hatzav ha'nok ha'koich halta ha'choymet ha'tunshomes elat meim lechem b'chol hasheretz kol ha'negeh behem b'moisem yitma ad ha'arif. If you touch such a sheretz, you become tamei till the night. Even if you go to the mikveh, you remain tamei till the night. Okay, v'chol ha'sheyipel behem b'moisem yitma mekol kli eitz beged ha'oirei sakot kol kli ha'sheyasem melachem behem b'mayim yuv v'tamei ader v'tar. If this sheretz falls on any utensil of wood or a beged or leather or a sack or a vessel that you do malacha, it becomes tamei. Lamed Gimel v'chol kli cheres asher yipol mehem el toichoi. Those are critical words. You see, in the previous pasuk Lamed Beis it says v'chel ha'sheyipol of mehem b'moisam. If a sheretz falls on it by a clay cheres, it's suddenly el toichoi. Toichoi means the inside, ba'avire, the ear space, the cavity, the what's the word? Indentation, the hole, into the hole. So any kli cheres that the sheretz fell el toichoi, koil asher b'soichoi yitma. Anything that's inside this keli becomes tamei. And you have to break, you have to dissolve the earthenware pot because it cannot go to the mikveh. The mikveh will not cleanse it. You have to, it's earthenware, so you have to break it up and then it becomes tight. Even if you put it back together, it's good. Once it breaks, it's tired. Then you could take the earth and put it back together. We don't mind. But that's how you're metayher klei cheres. Klei cheres is always through shvira. Now, if I would only have pasuk lamed gimel, it says anything in the klei cheres becomes tamei. Anything, right? Anything. But now comes pasuk lamed daled with an important qualification. Mikol ha'oichel asher ye'ochel asher yavrei elav mayim yitma v'chol mashka asher yeshasem b'chol kli yitma. All foods that are eaten which had water come on them, that becomes tamei. And any liquid that you drink in any keli, that becomes tamei. In other words, what is in the keli cheres that becomes tamei from the sheretz that went into the keli? All the food and all the drinks. So how do you teach this? So the Mishnah Masechta Kelim says, it's not that the food is a rishon. The food came in contact with the keli, and the keli came in contact with the sheretz. So the sheretz is an av, the keli is a rishon, and the pas is a sheni. Amalei Rabbi barav l'rava. Amalei Rabbi barav l'rava. Rabbi, the son of Rava, said to Rava, v'nechzer l'haytaner command mali tumadami. Why don't we view this oven as though its ear is filled with the tumah of the sheretz, v'taheve high pas rishona, and therefore the pas, the bread, should be halachically considered a rishon, not a sheni. Meaning, if you would tell me, how does a klei cheres become tamei? Through the sheretz touching the surface of the keli inside or outside, then I understand. It works in a very practical way. The tumah touches the vessel becomes tamei. Got it. Now the vessel transfers tumah to something else. For example, I put in a piece of bread, so the bread touched the keli touched the sheretz, so the bread becomes a sheni. But since we're saying that a klei cheres becomes tamei even if the sheretz never touched the keli, there's something, a strange halacha here. The sheretz never came in any physical contact with the keli. All that happened was it was suspended in the ear of the keli. So l'cha'oida, what does this mean? What does this mean? So how did the keli become tamei? How did the keli become tamei?
And the keli became a rish.
Yeah. So how did the keli become tamei? So the Bar is saying exactly. So everything should become a rishon, because basically it seems like what the Torah is teaching us is that we have to view the ear as though the avir, right? Like he says, next to that time, command the mole tumadami. It should be considered as though the avir, the ear, is filled with the impurity of the sheretz. So now when a piece of bread touches the ear, it becomes a rishon, just like the keli. How did the keli become tamei? The sheretz never touched the keli. The sheretz, so to speak, touched the ear, the atmosphere, the ambiance, the avir, the luft of the keli. And because the keli is touching the ear, because the ear fills the keli, so it's like the keli is touching the sheretz. So now I ask you a question. Okay, so if that's the pshat, so why does the Mishnah tell me that the pas is a sheni? The same principle should apply to the bread. The bread is not worse than the keli. Now you have a piece of bread in the keli. It's also touching the ear.
If it were wet, the bread then it would be different.
Huh?
If it were wet, does that make a difference?
All bread becomes tamei only if it once became wet, as we learned before. But usually bread has to become wet because flour mixed with water. That's v'chlal din, that for food to become tamei, it has to be wet at some point.
So maybe that's the reason. Keli doesn't have to become wet.
But let's say the oichel became wet. It's a grape, and the grape was washed off. I wanted it to be washed off. Now it's wet, it's dry, that's not relevant in what it's now. But it became wet. We're not talking about that issue. Because if it wouldn't have never become wet, there wouldn't be a sheni either. It wouldn't be mekabel tumah. So obviously it became wet. It says, Kol oichel asher yachel av shevel mamayim yitma. But why are you saying that the tumah goes down a level? If the tumah came because the sheretz touched the keli, and then the keli touches the pas, I understand. The sheretz touches the keli. Now I put in a piece of bread, the pas touched the keli. It's like if I touch a mace, right? And then I touch somebody else. So it goes down a level. I got that. It's always that way.
Yeah, like if two things touch the av at the same time.
But if they both touch the sheretz at the same time, nobody's going to say the keli is a rishon and the pas is a sheni. If the pas itself touches a sheretz, if a sheretz falls on a bagel, right? Not on the whole of a bagel, on the bagel itself. The bagel becomes a rishon. So he says here, the sheretz didn't touch the keli. The sheretz went into the avir of the keli. So the vart is that we look at the avir as though it's filled with tumas sheretz. Somehow the sheretz affects the avir. If so, the oichel and the mashke and the avir should also have the same geder. It says no, they touch the sheretz, not worse than the keli. But we don't say that. We say that the pas becomes only a sheni.
Right.
So you put the bread later. So Aver and the keli is a...
And let's say the bread is there b'shas ma'is, so we still say the bread is a sheni. Let's say the bread is there already. I have an oven, and on one of the walls is ungeklept, is attached a piece of challah, right? And a sheretz comes in. And if it's only in the airspace, what happens? The keli becomes tamei, and then the keli is matame the pas. The pas doesn't become a rish.
Then the pas and the keli become tummy at the same time. Sort of.
And still, the pas goes down a level.
What if the pas was suspended? Would it still be?
It becomes tamei from the keli.
Even in the air?
Yes, it becomes tamei from the keli.
From a practical point of view, how can the sheretz be suspended in the oven?
Catch it as it's falling in.
How?
Yeah.
Yeah, when it fell in, it was in the air and they're ready to
You want to know? A spider made a web and it got caught up in the web. I don't know. Or somebody suspended it with a string. I don't know.
The mice, if that same sheretz touched that keli from the outside, it wouldn't be tamei.
Right.
So it's a special.
So that's what Rabbi Barava asked Rava. Amalei, Rava said, Lo yisal kedaitich. You're wrong. The Chachamim did not see it that way. Why not? He's asking a question. Why? When you're looking at these psukim, why wouldn't they formulate the halacha that way? It would make more sense. He says they couldn't. And I'll tell you why. The Tanya we have a brayz. The brayz says, Yachal yu kol ha-kelim etamen me'avir klei cheres. You would think any keli that goes into a klei cheres that got tamei, that keli should become tamei from the avir of klei cheres. Because what does the pasuk say in Lamed Gimel? Kol klei cheres asher yipol mehem al toichai, kol asher b'soicha yitma. Anything inside of it should become tamei. So let's say I have a big oven, and in this big oven where a sheretz fell in, I now put in a metal pot. Does that metal pot become tamei? That's what you would think. It says kol asher b'soicha yitma. Anything, a wooden keli, any keli that's makabel tum, anything that's susceptible to tumah, Of course, food and drink, that the pasuk says clearly. But koil means anything that's inside of it, that's makabel tumah, yitma should become tummy. So that's what you should naturally think. Talmud Loimar, that's why the pasuk says, koila shebeseicha yitma, v'samichle. But right, the next pasuk, what does it say? Mikola oichel she'achel v'chol mashka she'yisasa. To teach me. Oichel mitame ma'avri klei cheres, v'ein kol ha'kelim mitame ma'avri klei cheres. Only food receives tumah from the airspace of a klei cheres, where a sheretz fell in. But all the other kelim will not become tameh me'avri klei cheres. But 1 second. If the ear space of a klei cheres is considered as though it's filled with the tumah of what? Of sheretz, so then any keli that falls into that ear space should what? Should become a rishon, just like the tamer. You don't say that. The Torah clearly qualifies. When I said kola shebetoichai, I added mikola oichel. Why say mikola oichel? Clearly telling me not anything. I said anything, and then I'm telling you what anything? Any food, any drinks, not anything. A keli not. Why a keli not? If the avir is considered filled with the impurity of a sheretz, it's like the sheretz. So if a keli falls in, it's like the original keli. It touched the avir. The metal keli touched the avir, so the metal keli should become a rishon, just like the oven itself. We don't say that, only food. This means from here the Chazal understood that the way you have to formulate the halacha is much different. It's not that the avir is filled with tumas sheretz, as though the avir becomes tummy with tumas sheretz. If so, every keli would become tummy. The pshat is something else. That the avir in which the sheretz fell in brings tumah to the keli. It's not that the avir becomes tummy with tumah sheretz. If that would be the case, a keli would become tummy, and oichel would be considered a rishon. The pshat is no, it's the sheretz that's an avatumah. And what's pshat? The keli is affected by the avir. In other words, the avir in this case is considered as though it touched the keli. And therefore the keli becomes a rishon. It's not that the avir has tumas sheretz. The sheretz is a sheretz. The avir is the keli. By a klei cheres you say, what's pshat the keli? Not the wall. Even the avir is a keli. That's also the keli. The keli is not just the physical wall of the keli. That's also the keli. But what's the keli? Keli includes also the ear. That's also the keli. It's also the wall of the keli. It's like you touched the wall. But it's not that the avir became tumas sheretz. That's not. The avir is considered the keli. The keli in a klei cheres begins with the avir. So the avir became a rishon. So if the avir became a rishon, yeah. So now the pas touches the avir, and that's the keli. It becomes a sheni. And b'meila, another keli can't get tameh. Why can another keli get tameh? Here we know why. And this is the source of the whole halacha, that a keli could never be mekabel tumah from a rishon. A keli can only become tameh from an av hatumah. This is the source. Because if a keli would become tameh from a rishon, the keli in the oven should become tameh, just like the bread got tameh, just like the liquid got tameh. This is the source. Now, what's the havana in this? We have to understand this. Maybe that's not the pshat. Maybe the pshat is that a klei cheres, the avir itself is filled with tumas sheretz. That's what the Gemarah proves. You can't say that, because if that's the case, all kelim would become tameh. But the Chazal clearly said not, and they understood it from the psukim. So we have to go back and say, kelim can't become tameh. Why? Because they're a generation later. Why are they a generation later? Because the avir is not tumas sheretz. The avir is considered that the keli became tameh. Klei cheres metameh v'navir. I once told you that the cuts, there's a vart I saw in the Shemesh Shmuel quotes his father, the Avnei Nezer, who was a son-in-law of the Kotzker Rebbe, and he says that he heard from his father-in-law a beautiful svara. All kelim have some value independently. You have a golden bowl. Gold is gold. Silver is silver. Even metal, wood, these have value. A wooden piece of furniture, a wooden cup, a wooden bowl, these have value. Klei cheres, what is klei cheres made of? It's made of mud. You take earth, you mix it with water. That's it is. Basically, it's free. Mud you could find anywhere. You don't have to pay for it. There is work, because you have to mold it, you have to shape it, and you have to bake it. You have to bake it in the oven or bake it in the sun. You sometimes put in straw to hold it together. So it's really very, very cheap. It's extremely cheap. You have to pay for the labor. That's how they make. But it's extremely cheap keli. It's very cheap. It's basically earth. That's what it is. It's earth. Earth mixed with water, sand mixed with water, earth mixed with water, and baked. That's what a klei cheres is. So what's the value of a klei cheres? Not the keli itself. The keli is a shtik zam. It's a shtik erd. It's earth. What's the keli? What's the value? The value is, it's not the labor, but the person who has it, what's the value of it? The value is that it can hold something. In other words, what's the value? The avir. The airspace. That's the value of a klei cheres. Every keli, the keli itself has a metzias. It has value. It's a piece of gold. It's a piece of silver. That's why the outside of the klei cheres doesn't become tumah. Because tumah is always commensurate with the value of something in terms of the person's usage for it. What's the value of a klei cheres? I could put something inside of it. It can hold something inside of it. Because it can hold something inside of it, that's the value. Where is that? The avir, that's the airspace. So what's the definition of the keli? The airspace of the keli. That's the vart. So b'meila, when a sheretz touches the avir, thus is the keli. It touched the keli. That's the keli. What's the keli? The wall. Man, that's nothing. It's a piece of earth. What's the keli? The keli is the avir. The avir is the keli. If the avir is the keli, when it touched the avir, another keli, if you touch the avir, you didn't touch the keli yet. Because the keli has independent value. You got to touch the wall of the keli. Boom. Now the keli becomes tameh. If you have a metal keli and you put a sheretz in the airspace, it doesn't become tameh. Unless the sheretz touched the surface of the keli, inside or outside. But a klei cheres, the moment you went into the avir, it's not that the avir becomes the sheretz. No, the avir is considered the keli. B'meila, when it touches the avir, it's like it touched the keli, because that is the definition of the keli. Of course, if it falls on the keli itself inside, it's the chavada good. It touched the keli and the avir. It's certainly fine. It's not a question. And therefore, we say that the keli became tameh from the avir, because that is the keli, and now the pas becomes a sheni. Yeah, good, yeah. We're talking here about real klei cheres. There's a lower level, by the way, called klei adama. Klei adama is kalim that are made just out of earth without even baking it.
Animal turds.
Huh?
Always use the expression animal turds.
Animal turds?
That's another way of making keli.
Klei glolim. It's made out of dung, yeah. So klei adama, klei glolim are b'chlal not makabel toma. They're so... It's not tumah. They're so valueless that b'chal not makabel tumah. Klei cheres is already of a value that it's makabel tumah. But still, what's the value? The main value is the avir of it. But klei adama, even though it's a klei adama, but it's so... because since it wasn't baked, so it's mamish, it's like... Yeah, it's very temporary. It's very transient. It doesn't have that. And klei glolim, because it's made out of dung, doesn't have that chashivus as well.
So was that in Bava Mitzvah with Rabbi Elazar, that was a klei cheres?
Yeah, klei cheres. Taner achnoi. Yeah, in Bava Mitzvah. You mean pedala, daf pedala. Okay. Let's see Rashi. Sagt Rashi. Vayeilech, the second to the third to the last line, Chafam and Aleph. Vayeilech lahaitana command the mali tumah. Given the kaimal and avri klei cheres mitamim in asheretz avol bishalei naga alma command the mali tumu. So that means halachically it's like the keli is filled with tumah. The avri is filled with tumah sheretz. The halei naga boy, he didn't touch the sheretz umitamai and still becomes tamei. V'tahavanami paskilu negas b'sheretz. So the pas should also be a rishon. Yachal you call a kelim im keli shetef. If a metal keli. Nasum b'toich klei cheres, keli shetef means a keli that you can rinse, meaning a keli that goes to the mikveh, goes into the mikveh. So it would mean a keli that's not a klei cheres. Nasum b'toich klei cheres, if it's inside an earthenware keli, v'sheretz b'aver achitzin, and there's a sheretz inside the outer space, above the keli. Yachal yeh klei etze, klei matzcha sheb'toich yitamu shem neksiv kala sheb'seicha yitma. If a sheretz came in, suspended to the tanner in the airspace, and then on the bottom a metal keli, it should become tamei, we say no. Talmud Loima, next page. When I told you anything that's in the keli becomes tamei, I'm talking about food or drinks. If the avir is considered as though it's filled with tumah, If you're going to consider the outer airspace of the clay cheres as though it's filled with tumas sheretz, nimtzas tumah noigaz begaber shel kli shetef, it means that the tumah is touching the back of the metal keli, clay shetef metame megabai, and a clay shetef, a metal keli that can go to the mikveh, becomes tamei from its back. So why wouldn't it be tamei? Ela shmamina. From here we learn kala shebetoicha yitma machmas keli hu demetame. From here we learn that when it says anything that's inside becomes tamei, it becomes tamei from the keli. It doesn't become tamei directly from the sheretz. Why doesn't it become tamei directly from the sheretz? Because it didn't touch the sheretz. Of course, if I have a metal keli in a clay cheres and the sheretz falls on the metal keli becomes a rishon. That's not a question. We're talking about that the sheretz didn't touch the second keli. The sheretz went into the airspace. So the keli that would be inside would have to become tamei, not from the sheretz directly, but from what? From the keli. And that doesn't happen. Only the oichel is. That's what we're saying. This pasuk teaches us the oichlin or mashkin who the mekabel tumah mevlad hatumah. Food and drinks who become tamei from a vlad hatumah, meaning they become tamei from a rishon. Aval keli loy, but a keli could never become tamei from a rishon. Umehai piruka, and from this explanation, from this answer, nafkalon bechol duchta, we learn, we derive in the whole shas hada ashkechan, this which we always find, the ein clay rishon metame keli. A keli that's a rishon could never transfer tumah to another keli. Never. What's the source? Why does a keli that's a rishon never bring tumah to another keli? And the answer is from what we just learned. Because the pasuk says that when a sheretz falls into a clay cheres, what's inside becomes tamei, but what? Only food and drinks, not other kelim. Why other kelim not? Because it's not considered like the ear itself has tumas sheretz. Rather, it's considered that the keli became tamei from the sheretz. So food and drinks that touch a keli that was tamei from a sheretz become tamei. Because oichlin or mashkin can become tamei from a rishon. But a keli can't become tamei from a rishon. A keli can only become tamei from an avatumah. It's clear? So this is what Rashi is telling us, that this is not just a source here, but this is the source of anywhere where you'll see that a keli could not be mekabel tumah from a rishon, only from an av, is this pasuk in Chumash, the way the Chazal explained it. That means, for a keli to become tamei, it can only happen if the keli came in contact with an av hatumah. That means, if a person was an av hatumah, or a keli was an av hatumah, how can a keli be an av hatumah? For example, if it touched a mace, right? Or if it touched a person who touched a mace, that keli will be metame another keli. That keli will be metame another keli. But if a keli touches a keli that touched an av, that keli is completely clean. Only oichel and mashka could become tamei from a rishon, not a keli. Now, she says this is from where this is the source for this halacha. Okay. What about a keli that doesn't touch another keli that's a rishon? That we know, we see. What about oichel and mashka that's a rishon that touches a keli? Let's say a sheretz fell on a bagel, and the bagel goes into a keli. It says, "Ve'ein oichlin or mashka metamen keli k'de yalif le'el mekal v'chaymer." And food and drinks will not be metame a keli, like the Gemarah learned before from a kal v'chaymer, that food and drinks will not be metame a keli. So just like a keli that's a rishon won't be metame a keli, oichel and mashka will also not be metame a keli. That the Gemarah learned in a kal v'chaymer before. For earlier in the Gemarah explained there that what? That we're not going to say that oichel and mashka could be metame a keli. And the Gemarah has there a whole kal v'chaymer to teach us why you don't say a keli could become tamei from an oichel and mashka. And therefore, we have here the halachas that a keli will only become tamei from an avatuma, not from a rishon l'tumah. See, Rashi here is summarizing basically the halachas that this sugya is now completing to discuss. Zakt Rashi weiter. let's just remind ourselves, what was the Kal V'chomer that Rashi is referring to? The Kal V'chomer was that Madach, a Keli, can't be Metame Keli. Right? So Eichel and Mashka that became Tameh from a Keli certainly won't be Metame a Keli. The Gemarah says, Madach a Keli, which touched the Sheretz, can be Metame a Keli. So certainly Eichel and Mashka that became Tameh from the Keli that touched the Sheretz, certainly they can't be Metame another Keli. So the Gemarah says, yeah, but what if the Eichel itself touched the Sheretz? Or the Mashka itself touched the Sheretz? Right? If the Eichel or Mashka, if the Mashka itself touched the Sheretz, that should be Metame a Keli? Yeah? If the Mashka, so the Gemarah says no, because the tumah of a Mashka that touched the Sheretz doesn't say anywhere in the Pasuk. The way we learn it from is from a Kal V'chomer, that if a Mashka touches a Keli, touches a Sheretz, right, that Mashka is Tameh. Yeah. So Dayel Abamin Hadin, Liyas Kenidan. So we can't say that Mashka could be Metame a Keli, because the whole reason that if Mashka touches a Sheretz becomes Tameh, we learn from a Kal V'chomer, if Mashka touched a Keli which touched a Sheretz. So we can say that in that case, the mashka would be more powerful than the source from where we learned that mashka becomes tameh, and therefore we say mashka is never metame a keli from the Kal V'chomer, and also oichel won't be metame a keli with the Kal V'chomer of mashka, as the Gemarah explains on Daf Yudches, madach mashka, which is metame oichel, is not metame a keli, and oichel, which is not metame oichel, certainly can't be metame a keli. So we learned with the Kal V'chomer that a keli will become tameh only from an avatumah, never from another keli that's a rishon, and never from oichel, and never from mashka. That's how it is. Okay. Zokt Rashi weiter. Next piece in Rashi. V'adam nami. What about a person? She'enoi avatuma. If a person is not an avatuma, meaning he doesn't say touch a mace. Ella, he is, what is he? He's a rishon. Kegoy. Noigeya betumas navelo b'sheretz. A person touches a dead carcass of an animal. An animal dies, a cow dies, it wasn't shechted. He touches it. Tumas navelo. Or sheretz, he touches a dead mole rat. So the person is a rishon. Because the sheretz is an av, and I touch the sheretz, I'm a rishon. Loi metame keli. That person will not be metame a keli, because the person, again, is not a av. The person is an av if he touches a mace and then he touches a keli, the keli is tameh. But again, a keli will not become tameh from a rishon. So we already see from this Gemarah it can be tameh from another keli. That's a rishon. We learned previously in Gemarah it can be tameh from oichel and mashka. And now we're learning it also can be tameh from an adam who's a rishon. Why? The ksiv, it says by a person who touches an avela or a sheretz, hanegeya benivlasam yitma. Whoever touches the nevela becomes tameh. V'loi ksiv kibuz begadim. It doesn't say that he has to also put his begadim into the mikveh. For example, when a person touches a mace, it says v'kibuz begadov. He has to also clean his clothes. They also have to go to the mikveh. Because they become tameh. But if the person who touches an avela would be metame kelim, then the clothes that he's wearing should become tameh from the adam, and they would need mikveh. Why doesn't it say that somebody who touches an avela has to put his clothes in the mikveh? The charaya that he cannot transfer tumah to kelim. Why? Because he's only a rishon, and kelim will never become tameh from a rishon, only from an av.
So why can I use this?
I can't use this because this only tells me about an adam. But I would think maybe a keli that's a rishon could be metame. That's why I need the psukim and shmini. And I would think that oichel that's a rishon maybe is metame. That's why I have the Kal V'chomers. So from all these sources, I learned together that a keli can only become tameh from an av. Avol gabi noisei. But there's an exception. When a person is carrying an avela or a sheretz, not touching, carrying. Let's say I have a bag and I'm carrying a sheretz. Gzeres hakosavi tum betumas masa. Shemetame adam letame b'gadim sha'alav b'shas ma'isa. There's a unique decree in the Torah that the begadim that you're wearing while you're carrying the sheretz become tameh just like you. Torah says, "Kol hanoisim min nivlasim yichabes b'gadav." Parshas Shmini. If you're carrying an avela, you have to also put your clothes in the mikveh.
Does that also work by a zav? The clothing of a zav while he's wearing them?
Oh, that's different. A zav is an avatuma. So he could be metame kelim even if he's not wearing them, even if he touches a baguette. But a person who touches an avela, he's only a rishon, so he will never be metame b'gadim, not that which he's wearing and not that which he touches. The chiddush is that when you're carrying an avela, even though you're only a rishon, and if you touch a beged, that beged will not become tameh because you're a rishon, right? Or you touch a beged, or you put on a beged later. I touch an avela, or I carry an avela. Yeah, I come home. I want to go out, I put on my raincoat. That rain, nothing happens to it. Why not? Because it touched the rishon even before I went to the mikveh. But there's a gzeirus hakasuv that when I'm carrying an avela, the begadim that I'm wearing while I'm carrying it are like an extension of me, and they also become tameh. That's one exception, but it's not because I could transfer tumah to kalim v'araya. If I put the begadim on afterwards, nothing happens to them. It's just the begadim that I'm wearing b'shas ma'isa. I love b'shas ma'isa. Exactly. This is a unique din of noisei versus noigeya. And the reason they did this is because they contrasted the psukim. They contrasted the psukim, and you can take a look at it. You can take a look. Take a look at, where is it? Page before, page 313. 313, right? Vayikra Perikir Aleph, Pasuk Chav Dalet. Mamish at the end of the page, 313. Ula eila titamo kol hanegeya b'nivlasam yitma ad ha'arev. Doesn't say a word about my clothes. Am tamei. But look at the next pasuk. V'chol hanoisim b'nivlasam yichabes b'gadav v'tamei ad ha'arev. Suddenly his begadim need a mikveh. So this is where tumas masa is more serious than tumas maga. It requires kibuz b'gadim. Kibuz b'gadim. And the same is true with Hasheretz. Same is true with Hasheretz. It says in the next page, 314, Pasuk Lamed Vav, Achmayun ubar mikveh mayim yitar v'neigeya b'nivlasam yitma. Once again, I touched in the veil of Hasheretz and I become tameh. I become tameh. So Rashi, Gzeres hakasavi b'tomas masa shemetame adam l'tame b'gadim shalav b'shas masa. But v'loi b'gadim habayim la'achem ekain. But b'gadim that he puts on afterwards, after he leaves go of the nevela, he puts on b'gadim, they're not tameh. Why? Because the tumah of b'gadim is not because it touched a person who's a rishon. Because then even the b'gadim later should become tameh. Rather it's a gzeres hakasav by tumas masa that the b'gadim that I'm wearing become tameh. Alma, from here we learn, Vlada Tuma loy metame keli. A Vlada Tuma, a child of Tuma, meaning a rishon of Tuma, whether it's a keli, whether it's a person, whether it's food, whether it's drinks, will not transfer Tuma to keli. Chutz mitmei meis sho avatuma. Besides, if somebody is Tame from a mace, he is considered an avatuma. If somebody, for example, touches a mace, the mace is a v'avois hatuma, he becomes an avatuma. If he touches a keli, what happens? This keli becomes tameh because the keli is not getting tameh from my rishon. The keli is getting tameh from an av ha-tumah. And this is a chiddush because even though he's not a source of tumah, he touched a mace, but the halach is that when you touch a mace, you yourself become an av, so therefore you can be metame keli. V'chein adam loy matzinu loy tumah b'chol ha-toyre ele me'avatuma. Just like it's true with a keli, it's also true with a person. In the whole Torah, a person will never become tameh only from an avatuma. A person and a keli are in the same status. Oichel and mashke, they're more sensitive to tumah. Food and drinks. But a person and a keli, from a Torah perspective, we're not talking from a rabbinic point of view. Rabbinically, there are other levels of tumah. But biblically, a person will not be mekabel tumah in the whole Torah only from an av ha-tumah, just like a keli. Which means, kegoin, al yidei sheretz. A person can come to me through a sheretz, he can touch it, he can carry it. Nevela. A nevela would be a dead carcass of an animal, even kosher if it wasn't shechted. Shichva zera. Shichva zera is semen, is an avatuma. Al yidei zav, through a zav. A zav is somebody who has an irregular discharge. That's a particular illness. He's an avatum. I could become tameh from him. Maya noisav means the well springs of a zav, meaning his saliva, his urine, the flow of the ziva. Umedrasai, or something that the zav sleeps on or sits on. This is a unique element that a zav could be metame, that which you sit on or that which you lay on in 5 ways. If he stands or sits or lays or leans or hangs on it, this is called midras. That becomes an av. Vayidei nida, through a nida, she's an av. If he has contact with the nida, mayinaseh means the water flows from her saliva, etc. Midraser, what she lays on. These have a unique status of avatum. And finally, vayidei tmei meis. A Jew, a person who touches a mace, and I touch him, even though I touch somebody who touched the mace, he's an av, and therefore I become tamei. I become a rishon. If you look through the whole Torah, you never find a person becoming tamei through any contact with anything outside of an avatumah. Just like a keli, you never find. But the exception is foods and drinks. Food and drinks, we see got tamei from a keli, which got tamei from a sheretz. So oichel and mashke can become a sheni, because the Torah clearly says they touched the rishon, which touched the sheretz. But a person and a keli, they can only become tamei through an av hatumah mid the oraisa. In the whole Torah, we find no other source of tumah, and therefore we cannot create any new source of tumah. This is what Rashi taught us here. So this Rashi summarizes the sugya of how tumah travels. So what's the summation? The summation is that any vlad hatumah will not be metame kelim in a Torah, right? Any vlad hatumah will not be metame kelim in a Torah, besides a tmei meis, because even though his tumah doesn't come from him himself, it's a tulda from tumas meis, but he's not considered a rishon, he's considered an av, and therefore he will be metame kelim, because the meis is avais hatumah, and an adam will also not become tamei from something that's not an av hatumah, because every tumah in Torah where a person becomes tamei is always an av hatumah. Sheretz, nevela, zera, zav, zava, nida. Never do you become tamei from anything outside of an av hatumah. Rashi does not mention a yoledes, a woman who gives birth, even though she's also metame and adam, because the Torah just says that she's like a nida, and therefore we already learn it from nida, which Rashi does mention. So Rashi brings a proof that kelim, oichlin, mashkin, and adam, anything that's addition of tumah, if it's a keli, or it's oichel, or it's mashka, or it's a person, will not be metame other kelim, right? All the types of ladus of tumah, if a keli is a rishon, if oichel and mashka, if an adam, it will not be metame kelim. He doesn't just bring one proof, like you said, to just bring one proof and say, all rishons are not metame kelim. You could just prove it, say, we see only a keli can be metame, only oichel and mashka, not another keli. So it proves that all rishon, he brings a separate proof for oichel and mashka, he brings a separate proof that an adam is not metame. For everything he brings a separate proof. Why? Because you can always say, this is only halacha by kelim, it's only halacha by oichel, it's only halacha by adam. Once we see that by everything you have the same halacha, we can now deduce that there's a principle. What's the principle? The principle is that a rishon will never transfer tumah to a keli. If not, you could say, maybe this tumah is a different type of tumah. So therefore, once we see in all 3 cases, sai by adam, sai by keli, sai by eichel and mashka, whatever is a rishon doesn't transfer tumah to a keli, we see a principle that a keli is not mekabel tumah only from a rishon, never from an av, and an adam is also not mekabel tumah from a rishon, only from an av. I should just add, remember that there was one view of Rabbi Yehuda who held that in a Torah, mashka could be metame kelim. He learned mashka sheyishasa b'chol kli. There was one view Rabbi Yehuda held that mashka not only can it become tamei min Torah and it could be metame oichel, but it can also be metame keli. That was the view of Rabbi. The Gemarah says that he retracted from it. He also retracted. So it's just good to mention that there was a hava in it, that biblically there is one situation where a keli could become tamei from mashka, because he taished mashka sheyishasa b'chol kli yitma, that the keli becomes tamei from the mashka. Even he retracts from it, but there is that hava minute that there is one biblical tumah of a keli which comes from mashka, even though the mashka is not an ava tumah, the mashka is only a rishon, because the mashka is not only a rishon, the mashka is actually in this case the mashka is a sheni.
So this halacha with kelim is both biblically and that it can't become it's not susceptible to tumah only from a...
Once you go into the Rabbanon world, there the halachas
just went in. Rabbi Yehuda, you went into the Rabbanon.
No, Rabbi Yehuda said min Torah, mashka is metame kelim. Min Torah, Rabbi Yehuda said mashka is metame kelim. Yeah, and kli cheres also, yeah. We're talking all min
So
HaTorah.
I'm saying, that's a further exception.
I think.
Yeah.
As far as the keli being with
Yeah. Midirabbanan, for example, an Adam could be a sheni, right? My yadayim, my hands, become a sheni. Or if I eat tamadika food, I become a sheni. So you have these cases midirabbanan. But min HaTorah, there's no such a thing. Min HaTorah, an Adam can only be a rishon. He'll never be a sheni.
And Rashi doesn't mention
Adam
something
and
that is an exception.
Or a keli will never be a sheni.
He doesn't
That was
mention
the-
an exception from the rule.
That was that dumb. That was that dumb of the.
A what?
A fellow, a good matas, he doesn't mention that as an
It's
exception.
the rules.
To the,
Yeah, he says, besides Tumas Meis is a different genre. He says, Chutz Mitmei Meis. Right. In other words, Tumas Meis has its own realm. Sometimes the Keli over there itself is like the Meis, and sometimes the Keli is like the Av. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the end, or this is still?
Now the Gemarah finished with this. The last piece of this whole sugya, from here till the end, we go back to the Mishnah about burning.
Pesachim.
The whole sugya came in about burning chametz
Erev
dika
Pesach.
truma erev Pesach if it's pure, with chametz dika truma that's not pure, and making it impure in the fire because it comes in contact. So the Gemarah now, this last piece till the end, concludes that sugya, which Be'ezer Hashem will do on Monday morning, 8 o'clock. Everybody have a wonderful day. A good geben shtor, a gmar chesed tova, a good tog, a good Shabbos, atzlacha.
This class is brought to you by the yeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.